Welcome to this episode of the Mayoral Podcast. I am your host, Matt Mayer. I have a lot to cover this week, but before I do, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share with friends and family. I also, just as a reminder, will put time codes in the description below, so if there's anything specific that you want to see me talk about, please feel free to go ahead and do so. First topic I'm going to cover here today is a little bit of you get what you vote for. So this first headline here from Post Millennial, it's a vice chair of Minnesota Democratic Party who advocated for dismantling police gets violently beaten and carjacked. And you see this picture here. It's pretty, it's fairly graphic. She's got blood on the right side of her face. You can see the picture on the left. Obviously her headshot, and obviously looks significantly less thrilled in the picture on the right. So just to talk a little bit about this person here was a defund the policer, and this is the reason why you don't defund the police. You see this kind of all across America in a lot of major cities. The petty theft getting into more violent crimes, armed robberies, things of that nature. And this is what happens when you don't prosecute crimes at the lower level, or you essentially get rid of it. Places like San Francisco, if you steal less than $1,000, you don't get charged, you don't go to jail, anything like that. It's not even anything that would deter somebody from stealing $900 worth of merchandise, which is why you see a lot of these CVS's, places like that have high theft, and people just walking in, walking out with the less than $1,000 worth of product. Places like CVS and Walgreens, they're just packing up and leaving these major cities because of these issues with crime. And this is one of the examples of how crime goes from smaller things into larger things, because criminals feel emboldened with that. And it's why you saw a big swing in New York City in the 1990s when Rudy Giuliani became mayor and said, we're going to prosecute everything. You start getting people for jaywalking, and as petty as that might seem, and I agree that it is petty, that led to the de-escalation of crime. And you saw murders that were upwards of 2,000 per year in New York City plummet shortly after Rudy Giuliani took office, and that's part of the reason why. And then you see things like this. It's the exact opposite of what we're seeing here today with a lot of these major Democratic cities. So again, back to the article. Shivanthi, I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name. I don't even know if I got the first name right. A radical leftist and second vice chairwoman of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minneapolis, who was left bruised and bloody during an incident, is calling for accountability despite her past history of being a notable defund police agitator. When you handicap the police from doing their job and these criminals feel emboldened, and again, then just escalate to the next step. This is just an example. Now, a lot of these people that are the defund the policers don't seem to think that this is ever going to happen to them, but it is going to happen to some of these people, and it's happening all over the country. So another example here, and I'll play this video in a second. Another example of this is the city of Chicago, my hometown, where the residents are really getting fed up with this. And this has to do with not only the crime in these cities, but illegal immigration. A lot of what's happening in some of these cities is because of the illegal immigration. There's people that are coming into this country illegally, and a lot of them are very bad actors. And we're seeing that kind of show itself where these sanctuary cities are, places like Chicago and New York, and they're getting what they've voted for, essentially, and that is these mayors who call themselves this sanctuary city, and the places like Texas are saying, okay, we're going to hold you to that, because guess what? We share the border with Mexico, and we're getting 2 million illegal immigrants a year. If you want them, fine, here, take them. And now it's starting to spill over, and there's a lot of people like this that are seeing the errors of their policies. So this is just a quick video here of the people in Chicago that are getting fed up with the violence and the illegal immigration in their part of the city.
All these resources that have not come to us, now you want to overly compensate for people who never lived here before, and we need to be taken care of first and foremost before anything else happens here.
Why would any leader put our black communities already riddled with crime at further risk by placing unvetted non-taxpayers steps away from our seniors, our children, and our homes we've worked so hard on our own to secure.
We are at war, people. Our communities are at war. They are violating our communities, and we asking that we across the country, and we asking and we're demanding for office of Black America, or whatever you want to call it, to deal with issues like this.
That's right.
I did get placed on a wait list, but I was told that the immigrants was taking priority. See, that's a story that a lot of people don't know, and it hurt me. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I understand we need to be humanitarian, but these people my participants are third and fourth generation Chicagoans, born, bred, fed, and raised here. My grandmother, Mayrella Carrington, rest in peace, always said, Craig, charity starts at home first, and then it go abroad.
Politically, having over 500 people in our community.
So you see the people there in Chicago getting fed up with the illegal immigration, and this is the crazy part. You heard the one guy say that he's being put on a waiting list because illegal immigrants are being prioritized over him. I seen this in a clip from New York just the other day, and they were arresting people that were trying to block buses from coming into the city with illegal immigrants. Now, it is illegal to block those buses, and those people should be arrested because you see these climate activists doing this all over the place, blocking traffic to raise awareness for climate change or whatever the hell they're trying to do. But these people are being shooed out of the way, are being locked up from trying to protect their city from an invasion, their hometown, their neighborhood, whatever it is, from an invasion. And the federal government is just letting these people in. There's videos all over the place, too, of the state of Texas putting up this razor wire, and then the Biden administration cutting it down and letting the illegal immigrants in. It's gotten absolutely out of control. But again, these are the policies that people have voted for. And I don't feel that there's enough people that know what is actually happening here in these areas of the country. And you don't see this stuff on the mainstream media because they don't want to show it. They want Biden and the Biden administration to get reelected, and just rampant crime in these major cities and illegal immigration all over the place. And they're just going to try to do that again in 2024. Here's another one. This is just a headline, and I'll play a little bit of the clip here in a second. But this is Eric Adams, and he's talking about how it's unsustainable what's happening in the city of New York because of the amount of funding that they're going to have to put in there. He says, we're getting no support on this national crisis, and let me tell you, New Yorkers, never in my life have I had a problem I did not see an end to. He's like, I do not see the ending to this. That's a lot coming from this guy who was a sanctuary city kind of guy. This is from Australia, and one of the things that I learned a little while ago is if you really want to see what's going on in this country, like a more truthful view of it, watch international news. What these other countries are saying about the United States. There's still going to be some type of spin if you get some type of globalist media outlet, but you're going to see a little bit more honest journalism when it comes to some of these places overseas. So here's a cut from from Sky News in Australia talking about exactly what I was just saying, that you essentially get what you vote for with some of these radical policies. Here we go.
Let's cross to the US, where the Democrats are having a reality check of their own. You see, the radical open border policies they championed are having an impact, not just on the border towns where millions of illegal immigrants have flooded in since the Biden administration came to power, but now the impact is being felt in places like New York City, where Mayor Eric Adams used to say things like this.
You pledged during your campaign to keep New York City a sanctuary city. Do you have any concern that policy is attracting more people to the border, more people to cross the border to make that dangerous trip?
No, not at all. This city has always been a sanctuary city, and we've always managed those who wanted to come to New York City to pursue the American dream.
Sanctuary city, all those feel-good platitudes and virtue signaling. But when faced with the reality of the policies he championed, this is what Eric Adams sounds like today.
I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City. We're getting 10,000 migrants a month. One time we were just getting Venezuela. Now we're getting Ecuador. Now we're getting Russian-speaking coming through Mexico. Now we're getting Western Africa. Now we're getting people from all over the globe have made their minds up that they're going to come through the southern part of the border and come into New York City. And everyone is saying it's New York City's problem. Every community in this city is going to be impacted. We got a $12 billion deficit that we're going to have to cut every service in this city.
Oh, dear me, talk about a reality check. But still, the dim-witted left cannot acknowledge something that even children learn eventually, that actions have consequences. You implement dumb policies, you get catastrophic consequences. And talking about dim-witted lefties, let's check in with how the ladies of The View, filmed in New York City, are coping with the small influx of illegal migrants, small when compared to what states like Texas.
The View it's so funny to listen to these women talk. And I know I've seen this clip several times. I'm going to finish this clip out, at least so people, my viewers, can watch and see what the ridiculous statements that is that The View is putting out these days. And Joy Behar is just, it's unbelievable. Like this is, it's not just Joy Behar, it's everyone. And she watch what I'm going to play the clip. Watch what she brings up. Here's The View.
Arizona have been dealing with.
It puts tremendous stress on a city, on a community, on the social services. They need to be resettled elsewhere.
They need to be out. We're this massive country.
And it's only going to get worse with global warming and climate change because people can't live in certain parts of this world.
Climate change!
It's climate change, guys. It's all climate change. It's all racist. It's all sexist. It's all homophobic. It's all transphobic. It's all everything-ophobic. It's anything that they don't like. Any problem has to do with every single one of these. And a lot of these are their own doing. The problem, the humanitarian crisis at the southern border is because of Joe Biden's policies. And it's because policies that people like Joy Behar and the people on The View champion because they don't think that they'll ever have to live with it. But then you see, again, this woman here, and their bad policies are coming back to bite some of them in the ass. Eric Adams just played the clip. His policies, his sanctuary city, that was September 2022. He was saying that clip, I believe, may have been from August of 2022, may have been from August of 2023 or September 2023. I can't remember exactly, but less than a year later does a complete 180 on his stance on illegal immigration. So you wonder what the consequences of these policies are, and they're seeing it. And again, this is, you get a get what you vote for type of thing. I still have sympathy for the people that are in those cities and states that didn't vote for this. You know, there's still, even in a deep blue state, it's still, 60-40, something like that. 40% of the population did not want any of this. And to the credit of some of the 60%, they didn't want this either. But again, these are things that people like myself and Trump and conservatives have warned about. Like, you vote for these people because you don't like Donald Trump, you don't like his personality, and this is what you end up seeing all over the nation. And then you'll see places like this. This is New Mexico. This is the governor. I think most people have heard this story by now. I think it's worth reiterating the point that these lawmakers and public officials that are doing things that are in your best interest or in the name of making places safer or whatever it is, and in doing so, strip away your rights. This is exactly the issues that people are talking about. Now, this woman in Nevada, this governor, did something clearly unconstitutional. A lot of Democrats and gun control advocates have even come out and said, hey, this is a bridge too far. You can't just unilaterally take away people's constitutional rights. There's a constitutional, if I'm not mistaken, a constitutional conceal and carry in the state of New Mexico, and she's just taking that away. When you give these people these types of powers, they tend to never give it back. So here's her defending her stance on why she decided to suspend constitutional rights of the people of New Mexico.
On any street corner in too many cities in New Mexico, there is someone with a gun sticking out of their waist or their belt. And I'll tell you, if you're a young person, you're not allowed to have a handgun.
Well, it's a crime already.
I got it. But
I'll stop it right there. It's a crime already, the journalist said. And she says, I got it. What do a lot of these people not understand about criminals? If it's illegal for them to do things like murder, rob people, carjackings, things of that nature, what makes you think that they're going to stop doing that? She'll continue on talking about getting rid of the constitutional rights for her citizens and trying to justify it. Unbelievable, this woman here.
we won't be able to arrest all of them. So imagine, just in a perfect world, if this was upheld, it gives all of these police officers the ability to focus on the real criminals.
Last follow-up.
Yeah. But your point is valid.
You took an oath to the Constitution. Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms.
Yeah, unbelievable. This has been the rallying cry of leftist governors that they have the ultimate authority. We could suspend your rights if we declare something to be an emergency and then say things broadly, a temporary amount of time. What does temporary even mean? What does it mean? I'll give you an example right here from my former state, Illinois. This is from earlier this year. Keep in mind, this is from January 19th, 2023. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker extended his COVID-19 emergency powers into his second term. Illinois is one of only 9 states still claiming disaster status as a result of COVID-19. At this point, earlier this year, there was 9 states still signing back-to-back consecutive COVID-19 emergency issues. Look at this. It says here, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has issued his 38th COVID-19 disaster proclamation, extending his emergency powers into his second term through February 5th. So J.B. Pritzker and a lot of governors decided that they were going to declare a state of emergency, and he signed it for 38 consecutive executive orders claiming a state of emergency in the state of Illinois. But you look at that, 70% of his time up to that point, February 5th of this year, he was claiming emergency powers. When is this governor going to relinquish her emergency powers? Nobody knows. She's claiming it's a temporary amount of time. But what does temporary mean? She didn't say anything. They don't even put a caveat in there that says, hey, once we get to this number or this percent or whatever, I will take away the emergency orders. I will no longer call it a state of an emergency. No one has ever done that when it comes to these state of emergencies. They just claim state of emergency. They don't say when it's going to end. It just ends when they say it ends. And here's an example, 38 consecutive emergency orders for the state of Illinois. This woman, who knows how long she's going to try to claim an emergency in the state of New Mexico. But they essentially suspend rights. That's what they said. They suspend the rights. You see this happening in Ukraine right now. Zelensky saying, until the war's over, we're not holding any elections. Just suspending the people to even vote to say we want to continue with his policies or not. He's not even leaving that as an option. And you have people in the United States worried about what if Donald Trump gets reelected? He's never going to leave office. It's like, what's your evidence of that? I played a clip from my last episode of Rachel Maddow saying, oh, if Donald Trump gets into office, he's going to essentially be king. He's never going to leave. There is no evidence of that. And with anyone, you can say that. that if they get into office, they're never gonna leave. Joe Biden is a bigger threat to not leave office than Donald Trump if Trump were to get reelected. And here's why. When Trump lost in 2020, as much as he tried to get the election overturned, he tried different specious legal theories to make his claim that that he can prove that it was stolen. A lot of that wasn't even alleged in court. And it ended up, the Congress certified the election for Joe Biden. And guess what? On January 20th, Trump left office. So your claim is that Trump will stay in office forever. And the only evidence that anyone could possibly have is that previously, when this guy lost an election, he didn't leave office. But he actually did. And that doesn't happen very often. You see a lot of two-term presidents, especially since I was born. You had Reagan back-to-back. Bush only won one term, but then you had back-to-back Clinton, back-to-back Bush, back-to-back Obama, and then Trump, a one-term president. So your evidence is that Trump lost and left office, even though he was upset that he lost the election of 2020 and tried to get it overturned. So therefore, if he gets elected in 2024 and he can't run in 2028, he's not going to leave office? He would have no claim at all. At all. He can't run. He cannot run in 2028. In 2020, he's claiming that the election was stolen from him. In 2028, what would be his stance to just stay in office? But then you have people like Rachel Maddow, who probably champions J.B. Pritzker and whatever the leftist governor of New Mexico is, with these never-ending emergency powers, claiming that Trump would be the person not to leave office, even though he's the only person alive that you could point to losing a presidential election and leaving office when he was supposed to leave office. Again, there's a lot of what Trump did that you cannot like, and a lot of things that I don't like what Trump did from election day until January 20th, the day that he left office. But he left office. Don't like a lot of the stuff in between, but he still left the office. Nothing about J.B. Pritzker or the 9 other states that had 2-3 years of emergency orders for COVID. That's not a threat to democracy. Not at all. This is information warfare at its best. Wikipedia secret agent, CIA role in monitoring online encyclopedia. I think a lot of people that have looked at Wikipedia entries said that there is obviously some type of an agenda to it. You see people that are on the right that are considered that are called conspiracy theorists, white nationalists, whatever. There's language that is used to describe certain people that is only used for people on the right, not people on the left. So it seems obvious that at least they had a political tilt. Now this is an interview from it was from back in the beginning of August from Larry Sanger talking about, and he's one of the co-founders of Wikipedia, talking about how he thinks that the CIA, FBI, and others have been using Wikipedia for more than a decade. So Sanger highlighted that evidence suggests CIA and FBI computers were used as early as 2008 to edit Wikipedia articles. So 2008, that's 15 years ago. And he's saying this has at least been going on for a decade. This activity was first brought to light in 2007 by a programming student named Virgil Griffith, who developed a program called Wikiscanners to track edits made from certain locations. So I've talked about this a lot. People on the right talk about this a lot. The information monopoly, essentially, that the left has on not only big tech, but big media and all these skews. And I played from my last episode, I played a clip from 2019 of a psychologist talking about the role that Google searches had over the 2016 election. And the video was from back in 2019, talking about how it influenced the 2016 election to the tune of 2.5+ million votes going for Hillary Clinton. Now, I pointed out then, this is the type of thing that they wouldn't stop doing, because there's no way to stop these people if the government's not going to step in. And if the government is all kind of this uniparty, why would they step in and change what's going on now? And you see this CIA, FBI, working with Wikipedia or editing Wikipedia entries and skewing the public's view of certain people one way and certain people the other way, or certain events one way or the other. And again, this is an infringement on the First Amendment when the government is trying to control the speech that is out there. It's getting pretty dangerous at this point. So, and here I'm going to have a couple examples. Here's one. This is from the Washington Post. Miranda Devine says, despite Biden's claim, Europeans weren't trying to oust Ukrainian prosecutor targeting Hunter's firm. So there's that infamous video, and I've played it probably once or twice on my podcast before, showing Joe Biden talking about getting Viktor Shokin fired from Ukraine and with threatening to withhold $1 billion worth of aid. Now, the allies in the media have been saying that everyone was on that side. This guy was a corrupt prosecutor, and there was a big issue with him across Europe and throughout the political spectrum in the United States. I pointed out, I don't know if it was in a tweet or if it was in one of my videos, about them saying, oh, even Ron Johnson. Like when they get on the side of Ron Johnson, the left hates Ron Johnson. When they get on the side of Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, you know that they're just using that to cover something that they want to be true. They want this to be true. And according to Miranda Devine of the New York Post, the European Commission praised Ukraine's Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin in his efforts to fight corruption in a December 2015 progress report published 9 days after then VP Joe Biden demanded his ouster. In fact, the December 18th, 2015 progress report obtained by the New York Post says that the European Union was satisfied that Ukraine had achieved noteworthy progress, including, quote, preventing and fighting corruption, and thus was eligible for visa-free travel in Europe. So, again, the reporting for years since this video has come out saying Joe was doing that to cover for Hunter. No. Everything was because this prosecutor was corrupt. It had nothing to do with Joe covering for Hunter, which is essentially covering for himself, because I think everyone knows that Joe Biden is the Don of this Biden organization. According to this, he wasn't as corrupt as they made him out to be. And I think it's pretty telling that, you know, that everyone on the left is painting it one way, and now years later we're seeing evidence of the contrary. And again, it's all covering for Joe Biden and the Biden family. Here's some more information warfare. This directly from the United Nations, from their Twitter or X post, talking about the window of opportunity to ensure a livable and sustainable future is rapidly closing, warns at UNFCCC in latest report. So we have to worry about climate change. We need to take away everyone's freedoms when it comes to traveling and when it comes to using certain appliances, using gas-fueled vehicles. Pretty ridiculous. And then you see people like this. So the 2022 Nobel Prize winner in physics is not going along with this. So kudos to this guy, because seemingly everybody in the scientific community seems to be bought and paid for in one way or another, that they are striving to get results for their sponsors, not striving to get results to make science move forward. This is a direct quote from him. The pseudoscience has become a scapegoat for a wide variety of other unrelated ills. It has been promoted and extended by similarly misguided business marketing agents, politicians, journalists, government agencies, and environmentalists. In my opinion, there is no real climate crisis. There is, however, a very real problem with providing a decent standard of living to the world's largest population and an associated energy crisis. The latter is being unnecessarily exacerbated by what, in my opinion, is incorrect climate science. So again, this guy's probably going to be canceled, so keep your eye out for John Clauser. He's probably going to be canceled, or something's going to come up with this guy's past, and it's going to try to discredit this guy. Then you have this video here, And I'm not going to play the video. You can see it playing down there. I'm not going to play the audio. But really, from this video, the most important thing is this is Dr. Patrick Moore. He's one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, of all places. He says, at least 50% of the population depends on nitrogen fertilizer for its existence. And there's people trying to ban it. And the Netherlands and Sri Lanka have already made these kinds of moves. So it is truly a death wish in disguise. And the disguise is to save the earth, which doesn't need saving particularly. So this guy's saying if we get rid of these nitrogen-based fertilizers, which is what the left wants to do, ultimately what we're going to end up doing is causing mass famine, and there's going to be starving people. It's going to cause billions of people to die. And the climate activists are worried about the polar ice cap melting by, an inch a year or whatever it might be. And there's credible people finally stepping up saying, this is not the emergency that these people are making it out to be. And then you have people like this. This is, I didn't even know that this was a thing until I came across this posting here. This is another globalist, a World Economic Agenda contributor. If you can imagine this person, CEO of Rabocarbon Bank, Barbara Barsma, saying, quote, if I want to fly, I buy some carbon emissions right from someone who can't afford to fly. For example, if somebody lives in a small house, he can sell his carbon emission rights to someone who's living in a big house. This way, poor people can benefit from the green energy economy. One of the things that I need to point out here is that the people that are so in favor of this climate agenda, these elite liberals, these Bill Gateses, these Barack Obamas, these celebrities in Hollywood, every single one of this person uses a private jet. Now you have somebody like Bill Gates saying, well, I do carbon offsets. It's like, well, what if you did the carbon offsets and didn't fly your private jets all over the world? Then how much carbon would you be offsetting? But no, that's not an option for him. He's not flying commercial. He's not going to fly all over the world. He's a multi-billionaire. Of course he is. And the most coveted real estate in the world, generally speaking, is that on the coastlines. And you see people that are all about this climate change agenda, that are worried about the melting polar ice caps, that live on the ocean. I remember growing up, and if anyone's like me that grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, your parents would always say, actions speak louder than words. So if you're going to say, I'm going to clean my room when you were asked to clean your room, and then you constantly didn't clean your room, your parents would say, you're full of shit. You're not actually cleaning your room. Your actions speak louder than words. Now, maybe they wouldn't swear at you. Mine wouldn't, but that's basically what they're saying, is that your actions are telling me one thing, and your words are saying something completely else. These people live on the coastline. Barack Obama has a multi-million-dollar mansion in Martha's Vineyard. The highest point of Martha's Vineyard, the island of Martha's Vineyard, is like 300 feet. He lives like right on the coast. That's got to be 4 feet above sea level. If he was really worried about the sea level rising, him and other people like him wouldn't be buying property that they know would be underwater in a decade. And when I say underwater, I mean quite literally underwater. If what they're saying is true, and the polar ice caps are melting at such a crazy rate, in 10, 15 years, their properties will be underwater. There's no way they would be doing things like this. So again, their actions speak louder than their words, but not in today's day and age. To me, they do. I say, like, bullshit. I don't believe you. You live 4 feet above sea level. Do I really think that you're worried about the polar ice caps melting and the sea level rising and you losing your property? No, I don't believe that at all. If you knew in the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, you knew that your property was figuratively going to be underwater, would you have bought that property? And figuratively means, you bought a property for $400,000. You took a $400,000 loan, and then 24 months later, that property is actually only worth $300,000. So now you're $100,000 in debt. And if you were to sell it, you'd still owe the bank that $100,000. No, you would never buy that property. And you would at least get 3/4 of the money back that you would owe. You'd only be down $100,000. What if you bought a $10 million home on a piece of land that wouldn't exist in 10 years. Imagine that. You would say that this person's out of their mind. Why would you buy that if you know that was going to happen? This is what they're claiming. They're claiming these things are going to happen. But their actions are saying, no, they don't think this is going to happen. No, not a chance. There's no way that's going to happen. Why would you have like beachfront property in California? In Maui? Why would you have it in an island, any island anywhere? Why would you have it right there? I mean, you're literal feet above sea level. No, these people don't believe it. Their actions are saying that they don't believe the bullshit that they're telling, but they put it out there and people are buying it. They don't, and they defend these people. How would you defend that? I don't know how you defend that. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm dumb. Maybe they are that much smarter than me. That they know a way that their property is literally going to be underwater in a decade and it's going to be just fine. Somehow their property will be worth just as much, just as many tens of millions of dollars as they paid for it today. And they must be. Not every single time, but most times I seem to be bringing up part of the culture wars. And I've said this before, there is a little bit more to the culture wars than sexual orientation / gender, the LGBT stuff and race. But for the most part, that's kind of what the culture wars have been over the last decade and a half, whatever it's been. So here's an example of this guy is, what is he? He is the Illinois Secretary of State. And this guy speaks a big game here, talking about banning books in certain parts of the country or again, banning books. There's a difference between banning books and making books eligible to age-appropriate people and not putting it front and center in an area anyone could walk into. But he makes this case about book bans. This obviously liberal Secretary of State from Illinois, and then when confronted with the books that he's defended, and again they always do this, he completely does a 180 and starts playing the victim of, I can't believe that you would play that or you would read that in front of me or in front of Congress or whatever he says to Senator Kennedy. So here's a clip of him making these claims, and then I'll play the clip of him actually responding to Senator Kennedy on Capitol Hill.
The concept and practice of banning books contradicts the very essence of what our country stands for and what our democracy was founded on. It also defies what education is all about: teaching our children to think for themselves. If the book banners care to, they can go to our libraries and check out the Federalist Papers, the U.S. Constitution, and even Supreme Court cases on the First Amendment. What they will learn is that our democracy depends on the marketplace of ideas. That marketplace of ideas will not function if we ban books, because we will be banning ideas and preventing our children from thinking for themselves and having the ability to debate and learn and understand different perspectives. We will be banning knowledge, culture, empathy, understanding, and diverse and differing worldviews.
So again, this post is from a Twitter feed, Call to Activism. This is clearly a left-wing post here, because if you read the kind of the bottom here, it says Illinois is the first state to enact law that requires state libraries uphold a pledge to not ban material because of partisan disapproval. Smash the heart if you agree books should be read, not banned. So again, these are the types of things that I agree with in principle. Books should not be banned. There should be no books that are banned. However, they need to be put in an age-appropriate section. I think about, I'm old enough to have gone to places like video stores when I was in college, and there was an adult section that you'd have to be 18 or older to get into. You might have even been 21 or older. I can't remember at this point. Nonetheless, it was my junior year. I was old enough to go in it. And my friend and I would go in there and just read the ridiculous titles. I'm not going to repeat them, but we found them hilarious based on, like, they were just like puns based on movies that were sexual. So we found them funny. But in that example of the video store, those were put in a different section. So that is what people are trying to argue on this side of the argument, is that, listen, you don't have to not have those books available, but they need to be age appropriate. And even the state of Illinois has laws on the books against this type of stuff. Like you can't have this type of material in public. You can't have these public displays that's considered indecent behavior, right? So it needs to be behind a wall of age restriction. Like it's not appropriate for kids that are 10 and it's not appropriate for kids that are 12, whatever. And that's what the argument is. Some of these books, they're marketed as children's books, but the material in them is definitely not children's material. So here's him later that day on Capitol Hill with Senator Kennedy, and it says here that the books are genderqueer and all boys aren't blue. So here's his reaction to what Senator Kennedy says.
2 books that have been much discussed. The first one is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and I will quote from it. I put some lube on and got him on his knees, and I began to slide into him from behind. I pulled out of him and kissed him while he masturbated. He asked me to turn over while he slipped a condom on himself. This was my ass, and I was struggling to imagine someone inside me. He got on top and slowly inserted himself into me. It was the worst pain I think I have ever felt in my life. Eventually, I felt a mix of pleasure with the pain. Close quote.
Again, like you heard him read that. Do you think that is age appropriate for anyone under the age of 18? That seems like a pornographic scene description. That's what it is. It's in this book. So this All Boys Aren't Blue, that should be in an age-restricted area of libraries. It's fine that the libraries have it. If that's your type of thing, go ahead and read it. However, it should not be out there for children. You wouldn't say that about anything before the last couple of years. You would say, yes, absolutely. This needs to be age-restricted. That should not be in a public area where children can read it. It's not age-appropriate. It continues on. Here we go.
Boys Aren't Blue. The second is another much discussed book. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's called Genderqueer. Okay? Let me read an excerpt from that. Quote, I got a new strap-on harness today. I can't wait to put it on you. It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You're going to look so hot. I can't wait to have your cock in my mouth. I'm going to give you the blowjob of your life. Then I want you inside of me. End quote. Now, Mr. Secretary, what are you asking us to do? Are you suggesting that only librarians should decide whether the 2 books that I just referenced should be available to kids? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay. Tell me what you're saying.
Well, first of all, there's this...
Don't give me a speech. Tell me what you're asking me to do.
With all due respect, Senator, the words you spoke are disturbing, especially coming out of your mouth is very disturbing. But what I would also tell you that we're not advocating for kids to read porn, to Senator Booker's point.
What are you advocating for?
We are advocating for parents, random parents, not to have the ability, under the guise of keeping kids safe, to try and challenge the world view of every single manner on these issues.
You're getting conceptual game.
I'm not getting conceptual. I'm saying that...
you are. Yes, you are. Because I want to know what you're recommending.
So, again, this is exactly what I've pointed out in the past, is that when faced with the content in these types of books, they are trying to create some type of abstract situation in which a parent wants to share that with their child. Now, we can debate whether or not they should be allowed to share pornographic material with their children or not. However, Kennedy is talking about having these books not available to children. So if there was a parent that wanted their child to read this book, they would have to then check it out from the library and then share it with their child. Their child could not go to the library and check it out themselves. That's at least a bare minimum argument that Kennedy's trying to make here. And again, I told you I'd bring up Illinois state law. So this is from the Illinois General Assembly. So it's ilga.gov. And this is talking about criminal offenses. It's talking specifically about pornographic offenses. It's a very, very long part, but I'm just going to read this one subsection here. Section 6 here says, promotes the sale of material represented or held out by him or her to be obscene, whether or not it is obscene. So it's talking about specifically obscene material. That would certainly fall under obscene material. And there's also another part here. It says, in part 2, I didn't highlight this, but it says, presents or directs an obscene play, dance, or other performance, or participates directly in that portion thereof, which makes it obscene. So a lot of these children-friendly, however they're phrasing this nowadays, should fall under that as obscene or lewd behavior, pornographic type of acts, and that type of stuff is not acceptable for children. Now, if you're going to go into a private establishment as an adult and you want to see whatever you want to see, go right ahead. That's fine. These acts shouldn't be performed in public, and they certainly shouldn't be performed or geared towards children. And that's the point that people like me and people like Senator Kennedy are trying to make, is that we don't need to ban these things, but there is a time and place for them, and it has to be for adults only, not for children to see. There's no such thing really as a kid-friendly drag show. When, again, I'm reading, this is from the Illinois state government. It says, directs an obscene play, dance, or performs or other participants directly in a portion thereof which makes it obscene. A lot of the dancing, the thrusting, all this thing, they're in skimpy clothing, that is obscene, at least according to this law. It goes on and continues, talks about obscene material. You can check this out for yourself. But this is the type of stuff that people like me and people like conservatives like Kennedy are talking about. And then you continue on, more culture stuff. Again, there's the LGBT stuff there. This is Gateway Pundit. This is talking about 2 transgender cyclists destroy female competitors in Illinois state championships. So just from here, I mean, this is really part of the issue that everyone on the left seems to pretend like is not a thing, but is absolutely a thing. It's talking about one of the competitors in this particular race, Williamson, who's a trans man, trans woman. It's a man who thinks he's a woman and is competing against women. So whatever that is, is a trans. People are like, oh, he doesn't know. He actually knows. I do know. It is trans woman is what this person is. So Williamson previously competed in both men and women's categories at the Sky Enterprises Winter Criterium in 2020. He came in first place against women, but did not place when competing against other men. Not a big surprise. Obviously, a man's going to beat women in a high-performing male athlete is going to beat the best-performing female athletes in almost every sport. He has now collected at least 18 titles in women's categories. So there you go. No difference between men and women. Here's one. This is from the first game of the NFL season between the Chiefs and the Lions. They played what's called the Black National Anthem. I posted a comment on this. And this guy is kind of this Ed Krasenstein. Every now and again, he's got some good points. He tries to pretend like he sits the fence, but he doesn't. He's clearly a far left-leaning guy in a lot of scenarios. This is, in my opinion, one of them. And when it comes to the Black National Anthem, I think you could make the case that the NFL can do whatever they want. They're a private company. And as long as it's not at the behest of the government, if the government's not saying you have to do this, you have to do that, then, whatever. But they're going to alienate some people. My point simply, when commenting on this, is that regardless of how you feel about it being played, there's going to be another group out there that's going to say, well, why didn't you play my national anthem? Like, why didn't you play the Asian national anthem? Why didn't you play? There's not an Asian national anthem. And a lot of people are trying to come back at me like, oh, well, they weren't, slaves and all this and that. It's like, well, no, but there were Japanese people in internment camps more recently than black people, as far as my knowledge, during World War II. And there, because of that, there's not a Japanese U.S. national anthem. There's not a being played at games. And then there's, the native people of this country were treated pretty poorly as well by the early U.S. government and early settlers, just as black people were in this country, treated extremely poorly, being enslaved. But there's no Native American national anthem, and that's being played at these games. And my point simply is this: like, if you're going to open the door for anything other than just the national anthem being played, then you're going to then open the door for a ton of other people claiming that they have been oppressed by the U.S. government. They've been oppressed in the past. They want to be represented by the NFL at the opening ceremonies of each one of their games. And game starts at 1 p.m. Eastern, kickoffs at a little bit after 3, after you play a few dozen songs to be all inclusive for everyone. So again, my point simply being, like, where does it end? And the NFL has chosen to put this front and center, but have not chosen other people to be front and center. And that, at some point, is going to cause a controversy, if it isn't already causing controversy that just hasn't come to light yet. More COVID nonsense. It's just, again, I don't know when or if this is ever going to end. I mean, this is seemingly, like I said before, similar to the seasonal flu, maybe even like the seasonal common cold to some people with how they respond to being infected. And this is talking about this Pyrola variant. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's a subvariant. It's BA.2.86. And it says, the reason I have this from Wikipedia, I was just talking about, the left-wing influence over Wikipedia, the way that the federal government has kind of gotten into Wikipedia and influenced a lot of the public's opinions on certain people or certain subjects, whatever it might be. This is from Wikipedia, left-leaning site, very left-leaning site. The subvariant, which was first detected in a sample on July 24th of 2023. This is directly from Moderna's website. Moderna clinical trial data confirms its updated COVID-19 vaccine generates strong immune response in humans against BA.2.86. Again, the variant that I just said was discovered, first time ever detected in July 24th of 2023. This is from September 6th of 2023. So roughly 40 days later. It says, clinical trial data from research confirmed Moderna's updated COVID-19 vaccine showed an 8.7 to 11-fold increase in neutralizing antibodies against circulating variants. It says, including BA.2.86, EG.5, and FL.1.5.1 variants. I mean, all these points, I don't get it, but I'm sure there's a reason for them. My point being that they've already apparently sequenced it and have been able to do clinical studies saying that there's a strong immune response to that variant that was just discovered 40 days prior to publishing this article. Anyone who believes that they've actually done their full due diligence is absolutely insane. Like, this vaccine, this booster, whatever you want to call it, for these new variants of COVID, there can't possibly, by definition, cannot be long-term data on it. There just cannot be. They just developed it this year. There's not long-term data on it. So you can't say things like it's safe for humans. You can't say, because you don't know the long-term effects, you could say in a 25-day trial, nobody really, like, there was no real adverse effects of however small of a sample they have. I don't even know how many people they even tested this on. So again, somehow they're like Nostradamus when it comes to the sequencing of these coronaviruses, which is amazing, because this one was just discovered 40 days ago, and they already have something that will increase your immune response 9 to 11 times. It's really unbelievable, the breakthroughs that these people have been managing to do with these coronavirus vaccines. It's incredible. Now, I know that every year the flu virus that comes out, or the updated flu shot, is based on a projection of what they think the strains are going to be like, what's going to be the dominant strain. But they hit this one on the head. And then not only for that one, it's going to work against all the other variants too, which is quite crazy, because typically when it comes to the flu shot, it's not very effective. Like some of the times they're guessing at best, and they know that, and that's kind of how it's been advertised, that it's not going to catch everything. They're not going to have a perfect sequence of it by the time they actually put it out to market. So again, just amazing stuff from Moderna. And then you have people like Peter McCullough, who's been blacklisted throughout the pandemic, and he gets up here and is talking at this conference saying, I submit to you that COVID-19 vaccines and future boosters are not safe for human use. Again, this is the guy that was ostracized for saying that there were other alternatives that would work for COVID-19, and was blacklisted and canceled, and they're threatened to take away his medical license. This guy's been right on so many different things, and he's saying that he doesn't believe that these boosters are going to be safe for human use, and he's basing it on the previous boosters and the previous shots. There's been some pretty harsh adverse effects, and if you look at the data on what has happened to other vaccines in the past and what it caused them to get pulled from the market, it was far less than what has happened with the COVID-19 vaccine. So again, Moderna putting out the data. I love when they say that the data has been peer reviewed. It's peer reviewed of the data that Moderna put out there. It's quite crazy that they're allowed to get away with it, but they are. So it's pretty insane. One thing that I find silly, like there's certain times when I believe conspiracy theories tend to make sense, right? And that generally is one or two different potential scenarios. And they really have to do with power and money. So if you ask yourself, like, what do these powerful people, what do they stand to gain from whatever the theory is that these people conspired? So again, conspiracy theories have, and I've said this before, conspiracy theories have a negative connotation, but realistically, most of them are about rich and powerful people working together to enhance their wealth and power. What sounds out of the ordinary from human history that wouldn't be the case? So when you look at things from that lens and say, how does this help people become more powerful or more wealthy, or maintain their power or wealth, or minimize the amount of power and wealth lost? And then you see things like this, and this isn't talking specifically about that, but John Fetterman supposedly, there was people talking about like it was, it wasn't really him because he looked a little bit different. I guess he lost weight and different facial hair, whatever it might be. Yada, 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 so on and so forth. But you got to ask yourself, what would be the incentive to pull off a hoax like that? I mean, even if he wasn't right, which he's clearly not right, and you can see here, this is a quote from him from this clip below. It says, it's a mouthful, so it might take me a minute to read it. My message of the CEOs is, it's 74 million, collectively earning that, how many yachts can they need, to yacht, to water, ski behind it, I mean, it's crazy, my message. I don't even know what he was trying to convey. Something about CEOs being greedy and making too much money. Something along those lines, obviously, is what he's trying to convey. I don't know the point he was trying to make because that's gibberish and nobody can really decipher that. Maybe Joe Biden can. But again, what would be the point if this guy, whether this guy's not fit to serve office? I understand that. Mentally, he had a stroke and he's clearly not recovered from it. So he's not healthy enough to serve in the United States Senate, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of a lot of people. So, but covering up and having a conspiracy to have somebody fill in for him when he's already going to vote for the Democrats no matter what, and even if they had to actually take him, and again, this is, well, let me back up here. This is from. There was a couple of lucid moments that he had over the previous, few weeks, and people were saying, oh, and he looked a little bit different. Maybe this is a stunt double, somebody filling in for John Fetterman, which, again, what would be the point of doing it when he's going to vote for the Democrats anyway? And even if he had to step down, the governor of Pennsylvania is a Democrat, so he would appoint a Democrat senator, so they'd hold on to that seat. Yes, there would be a special election in 2024, which they'd have to win, but when there's an incumbent, typically that person tends to win. Pennsylvania is a purplish blue state. I don't think that there would be a big risk to try to pull something off like that. And again, he's physically probably healthy enough to serve, but not mentally healthy enough at this moment in time because of the stroke that he suffered. That's all that said, which makes it, again, I don't know how they increased their power of wealth by trying to pull off this conspiracy. So when I saw this conspiracy, I'm like, that the stuff just doesn't add up. But on top of that, Fetterman is a unique individual because of how tall he is. So if you look at it, say, what are the odds of even how many people could fill in for John Fetterman because he's 6'8"? There's 335 million people in the United States. Half of them are men. So right there, you're at 167.5 million people, which is a lot of people, but roughly 1 in 8,000 people are 6'8". And I couldn't tell by the language if it was 1 in 8,000 are 6'8" or higher, or 6'8" exactly. So let's just say exactly, because if it's higher, then that number is even further. There's even further odds of someone being exactly 6'8", right? But that takes, you're going to take that number from 167.5 million people down to about 21,000, because 1 in 8,000 people are going to fit there. Then you have to say, okay, well, this person's got to be roughly John Fetterman's age, who I believe is 54 years old. So the population of 45 to 64 is about 25%. So you got to take 25% of the 21,000. Now you're looking at 5,250 of males in America that are 6'8", that are roughly within a decade of John Fetterman's age. Okay? And then it depends on the data that you look at, but it's called 60% of them are white. It's got to be a white guy, right? And obviously that's much higher than if he was, black guy or an Asian guy or whatever. But then you got to take 60% of the 5,250, which gets you 3,150. So at most you have 3,150 people in the United States that would be roughly the same age or close enough, be the same height, and be a white male. And that's not even adding skin complexion, right? You can't be a extremely darker skin white guy. It can't be a guy like me who's got a lot of freckles all over the place, because that, would clearly be this guy's got freckles and John Fetterman didn't. So that would even make the odds even further. But you're talking about 3,100 people maybe that could fit that bill in the United States. Then he's got to look enough like Fetterman and then sound enough like Fetterman. I mean, it's just extremely long odds. So when I see things like this, it's look, I'm all about some conspiracy theories and investigating them if it's something that makes people that are rich and powerful more rich and more powerful, or covering something up, again, to limit their loss of their wealth or their power. But this just doesn't fit it. And again, it was all because he was somewhat lucid in a couple of moments and he looked a little bit different because he lost some weight. It seems a little bit far-fetched. And again, you lose credibility when you think something like that is actually happening. I mean, the odds of that happening are so astronomical that it's almost not even worth mentioning. But I figured, to be fair, I got to bring things like that up. I got to call out BS where I see it. It's just like, that's too far. When it comes to, just the statistics on like breaking down the fact that this guy's so tall and you just can't find a guy like that off the street. I'm closer to average height guy, maybe slightly above average. It would be a little bit easier to find a guy that looks similar to me than John Fetterman. So last topic for today. There's an article out there from the Washington Post. This is I'm reading here. I'm not going to show this, but just from the Post Millennial, it says Washington Post worries Biden can't beat Trump in re-election. Says he should not run for re-election in 2024. There's a lot of people out there that have been talking about this for some time now, thinking that Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee in 2024, and there's a lot of indicators that can lead you to that conclusion that they're trying to replace him. One, he's old. There's a lot of gaffes. There's a lot of baggage with him. It comes to this impeachment inquiry, and it certainly seems to be kind of leading down that path. I'm not fully convinced of it. I know that there's candidates out there that they would potentially throw out there. I've heard Michelle Obama's name thrown out there, although she said she has no interest in running for president. But what someone says and what someone's actually going to do are two entirely different things. Then you hear names like Gavin Newsom. That's kind of an obvious. He seems like he's campaigning as it is. Gretchen Whitmer, she's the governor of Michigan. They believe that she's a viable candidate. I've heard Josh Shapiro, even though he's a new governor in the state of Georgia, or I'm sorry, the state of Pennsylvania. And then even names like J.B. Pritzker, who is the terrible governor of Illinois. So I'm not fully convinced of it. I think a couple things. One is they've lied so much throughout the years, and that have now been proven to be lies about Joe Biden. And there's so much covering for him right now, claiming that there's not a shred of evidence that links him to illegal activity with regards to foreign influence and Hunter Biden's business dealings. But it seems to me like almost a perfect RICO case. Not only is there actual evidence to link him to these incidents, text messages, phone calls, eyewitness accounts, like I don't know how that's not a shred of evidence. Bank records. I talked about the suspicious activity reports in bank accounts that were linked to Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, as a grown adult, shares a bank account with Joe Biden, and suspicious activity reports were, I think it was 160 something odd activity reports that if you had more than a couple, you probably wouldn't be able to open a checking account. But the Biden family was able to somehow skirt those 160 plus suspicious activity reports. So it seems to me absolutely like a classic RICO case. The Don, and this was all set up for taking down the mob in like the 70s, because the Don would always be at an arm's length. They'd have a fall guy, whoever, he'd say, go take care of that guy. And there would be a murder committed, and the low-level guy would take the fall because he's the one who committed the murder and wouldn't turn on his boss and then the Don. But ultimately, what happened was they said, and if it's a criminal enterprise, anyone could be charged as co-conspirators. So therefore, they go after like accountants and lawyers and things of that nature to get them to turn on some of the higher-level guys, and the higher-level guys get turn on the Don, things like that. So that's what it was put in place for. And that seems to be the case here. Now, there obviously is direct evidence, as I just mentioned, linking Biden to these cases. So I think that it could be charged, and they set the precedent of charging Trump and his business associates and part of his administration as co-conspirators in the state of Georgia. So like the door has been open for that. But again, they're going all in. I know that there's some suggestions out there of potentially replacing Biden in the 2024 run, but if Biden goes down, they have to protect him at all costs, because they've just lied for so much, or for so long on so many different occasions about Joe Biden, that they can't have him, in my opinion, go down and them say, okay, yes, we lied about all this stuff about Joe Biden. We lied about the 2016 Russia collusion and Hillary Clinton, but this candidate, this time you can trust us. I just don't think that they don't have that type of influence anymore. The mainstream media, they're holding on, in my opinion, they're holding on by a thread here to try to protect Joe Biden. And again, if I were Trump, who's likely going to win the nominee, I would be harping on this, be like, look, like as soon as they kick Joe Biden out, and I would be talking about it now, like they're going to boot him because they know that he is a corrupt politician, and they're covering for him now, and then they're going to turn on him, and then they're going to say, hey, you can trust me about this guy. I know we were covering for the other corrupt politician, but that's because we were lied to. We were doing the right thing. We didn't know anything. But this guy, he's a good guy, or this girl, she's a good girl, whatever it might be. I think that they're stuck with Joe Biden. Personally, I think that they are. That said, I mean, crazy things have happened. He's going to be 81 years old, I think, at the end of this year, maybe sometime next year, whatever it is. He's not a spring chicken, and I think that they're stuck with him. And not to mention, at the time of filming this, it is September 26th of 2023. We're talking 13 months out. Primaries are in a couple months. So if he were to drop out anytime after maybe December, I don't know how they, kind of organize that. I'm sure that they will. Things will happen. But, once you start getting into primaries, like, and no one's really out there. Obviously, RFK's running, and Marianne Williamson, I think her name is, she's running. So there's a couple of candidates out there, but they want Joe Biden over those two candidates. So they're going to push Biden. And I just don't understand. I don't see how they get away from Joe Biden. They'd have to do it, in my opinion, in the next few months before the primary season. I can't. If it's this time next year, votes will already be in. With the way that they've expanded early voting and mail-in voting in some of these states. Like, the votes will be in. They can't pull them in 12 months from now. They got to pull them in by July of next year. I just think that they're running out of time, and I think that they've kind of dug themselves this grave of, like, we've covered for Joe Biden for so much and so much obvious corruption that we can't get away from them. We can't say we were wrong about all these things from Biden to Hillary and then hope that the American public trusts us. I think that there's enough people that are already seeing through this veneer of righteousness that the media has put up for Joe Biden. And when you have to admit that you've been lying the whole time, it's not going to be something that I think that they can sustain, and it's just not a winning formula, in my opinion, even though there are much better candidates than Joe Biden, who's pretty out of it at this point. So that's it for this episode of the Mayoral Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you can hit the like button, subscribe, share with friends and family on your way out, that would be great. And I will see you all in the next video.